The bully shoved a single dad in front of the CEO, and for one terrible second everyone in the cafe expected him to fight back. But Ethan Walker did something no one saw coming. Rain hammered the windows of the Bluebird Café as coffee spilled across the floor, and his 8-year-old daughter watched from a corner booth clutching a purple crayon. The man who had humiliated him stood there smiling, certain that power belonged to the loudest person in the room. Across the counter, CEO Claire Whitmore stared at Ethan, unaware that this moment would force her to question everything she believed about success, loyalty, and the company carrying her family name. Stay until the end, because this is not only a story about revenge. It is about dignity, fatherhood, second chances, and the kind of love that begins when two wounded people finally choose to see each other. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 36 hours before coffee spilled across the floor of the Bluebird Café, Ethan Walker stood barefoot in a narrow kitchen, staring at a pancake that had somehow burned on one side and remained raw on the other. Rain pressed softly against the windows of his small bungalow on the eastern edge of Asheville. The clock above the refrigerator read 7:12. Lucy had to be at school in 18 minutes. Ethan turned the pancake over with a spatula. Smoke rose from the skillet. From the kitchen table, Lucy watched him with the grave concentration of a scientist observing a failed experiment. Is it supposed to be black? It is not black. It is darker than my shoe. That means it has character. Lucy looked down at her sneakers. My shoes do not taste good. Ethan slid the pancake onto a chipped blue plate and covered the burned section with blueberries. He arranged them into 2 eyes and a crooked smile. There, structurally sound. Lucy leaned closer. It looks worried. It knows you are going to eat it. She laughed, and the sound filled the little kitchen with something warmer than the weak morning light. Ethan smiled as he turned off the stove. He wore faded jeans and a gray t-shirt with a small tear near the collar. A sewing needle was tucked between his lips. In one hand, he held Lucy's green school sweater. In the other, he held a white button that refused to stay attached. Lucy took a bite of the pancake. Her face tightened. Ethan removed the needle from his mouth. Honest review. It needs syrup. That was diplomatic. It also needs another pancake. That was less diplomatic. He opened the refrigerator and found half a carton of eggs, a jar of mustard, 2 apples, and a bottle of maple syrup with barely enough left to cover one breakfast. Lucy watched him tip the bottle over her plate. Dad. Yes, did you eat? I tested the first pancake. You threw the first pancake away. I tested it emotionally. Lucy narrowed her eyes. Ethan had seen that expression before. It belonged to Rachel. His wife had used the same look whenever he tried to hide exhaustion behind a joke. Lucy pointed toward the bread box. You can have toast. I will have toast at the cafe. You always say that, and sometimes I do. Evelyn says coffee is not breakfast. Evelyn has strong opinions. She says you work too much. She has too many opinions. Lucy took another bite, then looked at the crooked button hanging from her sweater. Mom used to do that faster. The kitchen grew quieter. Ethan looked at the button between his fingers. A framed photograph sat near the window above the sink. In it, Rachel stood between Ethan and Lucy at a fall festival 3 years earlier. Her red hair lifted in the wind. Lucy was 5 missing 1 front tooth sitting on Ethan's shoulders while Rachel held one of his hands. The photograph had been taken 6 months before Rachel died. Ethan did not avoid the picture. He never turned it toward the wall. He had learned that grief became sharper when treated like something that had to be hidden. He pushed the needle through the fabric again. Your mom did everything faster. She made pancakes better too. That is unnecessary. Lucy smiled, but her eyes stayed on the photograph. Do you think she would like my new teacher? Ethan tied the thread and bit off the end. I think she would ask your new teacher at least 12 questions. About me, about everything, the books, the fire exits, the amount of sugar in the cafeteria milk. She would embarrass me. Absolutely. Lucy looked down at her plate. I wish she could. Ethan placed the sweater over her shoulders and knelt beside the chair. I know. That was all he said. He had learned not to cover every silence with comfort. Sometimes Lucy needed words. Sometimes she needed him close enough to feel that she was not carrying the silence alone. He straightened the collar of her sweater. The button may fall off before lunch. Lucy touched it carefully. It is crooked. It is holding. She looked at him. So are we. For a moment, Ethan could not answer. Then he tapped the end of her nose. Get your backpack. By 7:31, they were running through the rain toward Ethan's truck. The truck was an old dark green Ford with rust along the wheel wells and a passenger door that only opened from the outside. Ethan had repaired the engine so many times that the original manufacturer would have struggled to recognize it. Lucy climbed into the passenger seat and placed her purple backpack between her feet. A spiral sketchbook stuck out of the top beside a box of crayons wrapped in 2 rubber bands. Ethan started the engine. It coughed once. Lucy looked at him. Structurally sound, deeply misunderstood. They pulled away from the curb. Asheville moved past them in wet shades of gray and green. Mist rested over the Blue Ridge Mountains. Water ran along the gutters carrying leaves through the streets. Morning traffic gathered near the school district brake lights glowing through the rain. Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel and the other wrapped around a paper cup of coffee from the day before. Lucy noticed. That is old. It is experienced. It smells bad. That is how you know it is strong. She opened her sketchbook and began drawing. What are you making you? Give me more hair. You do not have more hair. Art does not have to be cruel. Lucy added a few lines above his forehead. Better much. At the school entrance, Ethan walked her beneath a black umbrella with one broken spoke. Children hurried past in bright raincoats. Parents called reminders from open car windows. Lucy stopped before the front doors. Are you picking me up? I will be right here at 3. You said that Tuesday. Tuesday, Mrs. Bennett's water heater exploded. It leaked. It leaked with passion. Lucy folded her arms. Ethan crouched in front of her. I will be here. She studied his face, deciding whether the promise was safe. 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Lucy held out her little finger. Ethan hooked his around it. 3 o'clock. She kissed his cheek, then ran inside. Ethan remained beneath the umbrella until she disappeared down the hallway. Only then did he return to the truck. His phone showed 4 missed calls. One was from a landlord whose furnace had stopped working. One was from a bakery with a broken mixer. 2 were from Evelyn Parker at the Bluebird Café. Ethan listened to her message. Ethan, honey, I know you already looked at the machine yesterday, but it is making that sound again. The loud one. Jenna says it smells like pennies. I told her not to touch anything. Also, do not rush. I mean, please rush, but safely. Ethan started the truck. The Bluebird Café sat in Asheville's River Arts District, tucked between a used bookstore and a narrow pottery shop with blue glass bowls in the window. The building was made of faded red brick. Its wooden sign had once been painted bright blue, though years of mountain rain had softened it into the color of an old photograph. The gold bird above the front door had lost half of one wing. Ethan had offered to repaint it twice. Evelyn had refused both times. My father painted that bird, she always said. Ethan would point at the peeling wood. Your father would want me to save it. My father would want you to mind your business. The bell above the cafe door rang when Ethan entered. Warm air carried the smell of coffee, cinnamon bacon, and damp coats. The Bluebird was already crowded. A retired teacher named Walter sat by the window reading the local paper through thick glasses. 2 electricians shared a plate of biscuits and gravy near the counter. A young mother warmed a bottle in a cup of hot water. 3 art students occupied a corner table covered in notebooks, cables, and 1 untouched muffin. Evelyn stood behind the register in a flowered blouse and a blue apron. Her silver hair was tied at the back of her neck. When she saw Ethan, relief crossed her face. You came. You called twice. The second call was because the first one sounded too calm. Jenna Ruiz appeared from behind the espresso machine holding a towel. She was 24 with dark hair pulled into a loose bun and tired eyes that seemed older than the rest of her face. The machine sparked, she said. Then it made a noise like something was trapped inside. Ethan set his toolbox on the counter. Did you turn it off? Unplugged it too? Good. Evelyn poured coffee into a mug. Drink this before you start. Ethan reached for the mug. Evelyn pulled it away. Did you eat? Yes. What a pancake. Lucy's worried pancake appeared in his mind. Evelyn watched him for another second. 1 pancake. It was a large pancake. Was it no? She placed a biscuit on a plate and pushed it toward him. Ethan picked it up. You are becoming controlling. I have known you since you were 19. I earned the right. Ethan carried the biscuit and coffee toward the machine. The Bluebird's espresso machine had been built in Italy nearly 20 years earlier. Its chrome surface was scratched. One pressure gauge worked only when tapped. A small dent near the steam wand had been there since Evelyn's late husband dropped a tray against it during a Christmas rush. Ethan removed the rear panel and examined the wiring. Jenna leaned beside him. "Can it be fixed?" "Everything can be fixed." Evelyn called from the register. "That is not what you said about my freezer. Your freezer had accepted death." Jenna smiled. Ethan used a flashlight to inspect the connections. The machine's main pressure valve was failing just as he had warned Evelyn the previous week. A wire near the heating unit had also been pulled loose. He frowned. The connection should not have moved on its own. "Did anyone open this panel?" Jenna shook her head. "Not since you were here. Anyone from the property company Grant came by yesterday afternoon." Ethan looked up. What did he touch? Everything he could point at. Evelyn approached, wiping her hands on her apron. He said he needed photographs for his report. Was he alone for part of it? Ethan looked back inside the machine. The loose wire could have been vibration. It could have been age. The Bluebird contained enough aging equipment to make simple explanations easy. Still, something bothered him. He tightened the connection and tested the voltage. The machine came alive with a low hum. Jenna let out a breath. Ethan opened the water line and watched the pressure gauge rise. "It will run today," he said. "Maybe tomorrow. The valve needs to be replaced." "How much?" Evelyn asked. "About $400 for the part." Her face changed almost too quickly to notice. Ethan noticed. He always did. "I can find a used one." Evelyn turned toward the register. "I will figure it out. You have been figuring it out for 6 months, and I have 6 months of experience." Ethan replaced the rear panel. Evelyn returned with an envelope. She placed it beside his toolbox. "That is for the work you did on the refrigerator and the back door." Ethan opened it. Inside were $300 in 20s. He removed $40 and handed the envelope back. Evelyn stared at him. "No. I tightened a hinge and replaced a thermostat. You spent 2 days here. I spent 6 hours here and drank 9 cups of coffee. Take the money. You need a pressure valve. You need electricity at your house. I have electricity. You had a shut-off notice last month." Ethan's hand stopped. Jenna looked away, pretending to clean the counter. Ethan lowered his voice. "How do you know that you left the notice under your toolbox?" "I paid it, after I loaned you the money, which I paid back. 2 weeks late, it came with interest. You fixed my porch. That porch was a threat to public safety." Evelyn pushed the envelope toward him again. Ethan pushed it back. "You keep it." Her eyes softened, but her mouth remained firm. "You cannot keep helping everybody for free. I did not say free. I took $40. You have a daughter, I know. You have a mortgage, I know. You have a truck held together by prayer and electrical tape. The tape is industrial grade." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Then she took the envelope, not because she agreed, because she needed it. That truth sat between them. Ethan closed his toolbox and noticed a stack of papers beneath the register. The top page carried the blue and silver logo of Whitmore Urban Development. He glanced at Evelyn. "What is that nothing? Nothing has a legal department now." Evelyn placed her hand over the papers. "It is an offer, from Whitmore." She nodded. Jenna stopped wiping the counter. The room continued around them. Cups touched saucers. Silverware scraped plates. Rain whispered against the windows. Ethan held out his hand. Evelyn hesitated, then gave him the document. The offer was for the cafe property, its fixtures, and a narrow strip of parking behind the building. The amount looked large until Ethan compared it with the tax assessment printed on the second page. "They are offering less than the land is worth. They say the building needs major repairs. According to who? Their inspector? Grant Holloway." Evelyn's silence answered him. Ethan turned another page. The report listed electrical concerns, water damage, structural weakness beneath the counter, poor ventilation, and unsafe commercial equipment. Some concerns were real, others were exaggerated. One was completely false. Ethan tapped the page. "The support under the counter is fine. I rebuilt it in February. Grant says it has shifted. Did he show you?" "He showed me a photograph. A photograph of what I do not know." "Wood." Ethan looked toward the long service counter. Has anyone else inspected it? I cannot afford another inspection. Jenna folded the towel in her hands. He said the next report could affect our insurance. Ethan turned toward her. When did he say that? Yesterday? Evelyn moved closer. He also said if I waited too long, the offer might disappear. Ethan read the final page. The deadline was Friday, 3 days away. How far behind are you? Evelyn straightened. That is my business. How far? She looked toward the customers. Her voice dropped. 2 months on rent, 1 insurance payment, some money to the food supplier. How much total? Enough? That is not a number. It is the number I am giving you. Ethan closed the folder. The Bluebird had belonged to Evelyn's parents before she was born. Her father had built the counter by hand. Her mother had written the first menu on a chalkboard that still hung above the kitchen doorway. When Ethan was 19 and newly married, Evelyn had given him extra shifts washing dishes after the lumber mill reduced his hours. When Rachel became sick, the Bluebird kept a booth open for Lucy every afternoon. Evelyn brought meals to the hospital. Jenna, then still in high school, sat with Lucy while Ethan spoke to doctors. The cafe was not valuable because the walls were old. It was valuable because people remembered who they had been inside them. Ethan looked around the room. Walter had fallen asleep over his newspaper. The young mother smiled as her baby finished the bottle. One of the electricians quietly moved half of his breakfast onto his co-worker's plate. They want the whole block, Ethan said. Evelyn nodded. The bookstore got an offer. So did Mara at the pottery shop. Same deadline, I think so. Ethan opened the report again. Grant inspected this place 3 times. Yes, and each report got worse. Yes. Did the building get worse? Evelyn gave him a tired look. The building has been getting worse since 1987. But not this fast. She did not answer. Ethan folded the report and placed it inside his toolbox. Evelyn reached for it. What are you doing? Reading it somewhere. You cannot take it away from me. Ethan, I am not promising anything. That usually means you are about to do something expensive. I am going to pick up Lucy. That is not what I mean. He lifted the toolbox. Neither is that. At 3 o'clock, Ethan's truck waited outside Lucy's school. He had arrived 7 minutes early. Lucy ran down the steps beneath a bright yellow raincoat, spotted the truck, and waved with both arms. When she climbed inside, she smelled the coffee on his shirt. You ate at the cafe. I had a biscuit. 1 biscuit. It was a large biscuit, was it? No. She placed her backpack between them. Can we go to the art store? We need to stop at the hardware store. That is not the art store. The hardware store has paint. I need crayons. You have crayons. I need purple. You have 3 purples. They are different purples. Ethan started the engine. Explain. 1 is grape. 1 is violet. 1 is purple. That explanation changed everything. They drove toward a hardware store near downtown. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the roof of the truck. Lucy told him about a class assignment called My Safe Place. Each student had to draw somewhere they felt protected. What are you drawing? Ethan asked. The Bluebird, not home. Home is safe too. Then why the cafe? Lucy watched the rain on the window. Because home gets quiet. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. The answer was simple. That made it harder. At the hardware store, Ethan bought electrical connectors, 2 replacement bolts, a roll of wire, and a used pressure gauge from a clearance shelf. Lucy selected a new purple crayon from an open art bin. At the register, Ethan counted the bills in his wallet twice. He returned the pressure gauge to the shelf. Lucy noticed but said nothing. Outside, the rain had become a steady sheet. They hurried beneath the covered walkway. A black SUV sat crooked near the curb, 1 rear tire flattened against the pavement. A woman in a dark wool coat stood beside it, holding a phone between her shoulder and ear while trying to turn a wheel wrench. Her brown hair had begun to escape from a neat knot. Rain darkened the shoulders of her coat. She spoke sharply into the phone. No. Move the meeting to tomorrow morning. I am not discussing acquisition projections while standing beside a highway with a flat tire. Ethan stopped. Lucy looked up at him. She needs help. She has a phone. She also has a bad wrench. The woman pushed harder. The wrench slipped. Ethan placed his toolbox on the pavement. You are going to ruin that coat. She turned. Her eyes moved from Ethan's worn boots to his rain-soaked shirt. And you are going to ruin everything else. Ethan glanced down at himself. Mine was already ruined. Lucy stepped beneath the woman's umbrella and looked at the tire. My dad can fix it. The woman ended the call. I have roadside assistance. Ethan looked at the flat tire. Where are they? 45 minutes away. The water is already above the curb. She looked toward the storm drain. Leaves had gathered over the grate and the parking area was beginning to flood. Ethan held out his hand for the wrench. She hesitated. I do know how to change a tire. I believe you. You do not sound like you believe me. I believe you know how. I also believe those bolts were tightened by someone who hates people. Lucy covered a laugh with her hand. The woman gave Ethan the wrench. He knelt beside the wheel. Lucy opened the umbrella above him, though the wind pushed most of the rain beneath it. What is your name? The woman asked. Ethan. I was asking her. Lucy. The woman smiled. I am Claire. Lucy pointed at the wrench. He is Ethan. I gathered that. Ethan loosened the first bolt. Claire watched his hands. They were rough marked with old cuts and dark grease beneath the nails. He worked without hurry, explaining each step to Lucy as though the rain and cold did not matter. Why do we loosen the bolts before lifting the car, he asked, so the wheel does not spin? Why do we put the jack there, so we do not break the car? Why do we never crawl underneath it? Lucy answered more quietly. Because Mom said cars are heavier than people think. Ethan's hands paused for half a second. Then he continued. Claire noticed the pause. She looked at Lucy, then at the pale line around Ethan's ring finger. She did not ask. When the spare tire was secured, Ethan lowered the SUV and tightened the bolts. Claire opened her purse. How much? Nothing. You changed a tire in the rain. You did most of the difficult work. I failed to move one bolt. You confirmed the problem. She held out a $50 bill. Buy your daughter something. Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth. She already has too many crayons. Lucy stared at him. That is not a real thing. Claire laughed. The sound surprised her. For a moment, the hard control in her face disappeared. She looked younger, less certain, almost relieved. Ethan looked at her longer than he intended. Claire noticed. Rain moved in silver lines beyond the shelter. She lowered the money. Then let me buy you coffee. Ethan nodded toward the faded Bluebird sign across the street. I know a place. Claire followed his gaze. The small cafe. The coffee is good. The sign is falling apart. The sign has history. That is a generous word for peeling paint. You sound like someone who replaces things too quickly. Claire studied him. And you sound like someone who keeps things long after they stop working. Lucy looked between them. My teacher says people can disagree without making mean faces. Neither adult had realized they were smiling. A silver sedan pulled into the lot. A young man in a suit stepped out and hurried toward Claire with an umbrella. Ms. Whitmore. I am so sorry. Traffic was backed up near the bridge. Ethan's expression changed. Whitmore. He looked toward the blue and silver folder inside his toolbox. Claire saw the recognition in his face, though she could not know its cause. She extended her hand. Thank you, Ethan. He took it. Her hand was cold from the rain. His was warm despite it. Drive slowly, he said. That spare is not made for speed. I am not very good at moving slowly, I noticed. Claire held his gaze for another quiet second before getting into the sedan. Lucy climbed into Ethan's truck. As they watched the vehicles pull away, she opened her new purple crayon. She likes you. Ethan placed the toolbox behind the seat. She does not know me. She still likes you. You have been talking to Evelyn too much. Lucy began drawing in her sketchbook. Ethan looked across the street at the Bluebird Café. Through the rain, the old sign seemed smaller than it had that morning. The following day, just after 9, a black SUV stopped in front of the cafe. Claire stepped onto the sidewalk in a fitted navy suit carrying a leather portfolio. Behind her came Marcus Reed, a broad-shouldered man in a gray coat and a young legal assistant holding a tablet. Grant Holloway emerged from the driver's side. Ethan stood behind the counter with the espresso machine open. Claire saw him through the window. The warmth from the parking lot left her expression. Grant opened the cafe door and looked across the room as if he had already purchased it. Ms. Whitmore is here, he announced, to decide whether this place has a future. The bell above the door rang once, then slowly settled into silence. Claire stepped inside first. Rain shone on the shoulders of her navy coat. Her hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head, and the warmth Ethan had seen in the parking lot had been folded away behind a calm, professional expression. For a second, neither of them spoke. Ethan stood beside the open espresso machine with a screwdriver in one hand. Claire glanced at the machine, then at the faded Bluebird sign visible through the front window. The coffee place, she said. Ethan set the screwdriver on the counter, the flat tire. Grant looked from Claire to Ethan. You know him. Claire removed her coat and handed it to the legal assistant. He helped me yesterday. Grant gave Ethan a thin smile. How fortunate. There was nothing fortunate in the way he said it. Evelyn came around the counter, smoothing both hands over her apron. Ms. Whitmore, welcome to the Bluebird. Claire accepted the hand Evelyn offered. Thank you for meeting with us. I did not realize declining was an option. Grant stepped forward before Claire could answer. This is a standard property review, Mrs. Parker. No one is forcing you to do anything. Evelyn looked at the folder under his arm. Not yet. Claire noticed the way Grant's jaw tightened. She turned to Evelyn. I came to see the building myself. I have read the reports, but I prefer to understand a property before approving a final recommendation. Ethan crossed his arms. The recommendation seems to have arrived before you did. Claire met his eyes. The reports raise serious concerns. Some of them do, and some do not. Some describe problems that were repaired months ago. Others describe problems no one here has ever seen. Grant placed the folder on a table. You are not a licensed commercial inspector. No. Then perhaps you should let qualified people speak. Ethan looked at the espresso machine. Qualified people usually know the difference between a burned wire and a loose connection. Claire followed his gaze. What happened to the machine? Jenna appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray of clean cups. It sparked yesterday morning. Grant opened his folder. Page 12. Electrical instability in aging commercial equipment. Ethan picked up a flashlight. The pressure valve is failing. That part is old. The loose wire was not. Grant glanced at Claire. Old machines produce loose wires, sometimes. And sometimes people with no formal training misunderstand what they are looking at. Ethan switched off the flashlight. I have been repairing electrical systems for 17 years, in houses, restaurants, workshops, garages, and one church basement where 3 raccoons had eaten through the insulation. Jenna lowered her face to hide a smile. Grant did not. Claire stepped closer to the machine. Can it be operated safely? For now, Ethan said. It needs a replacement valve. How much? $400 for the part. More if they order it new. Evelyn looked toward the register. Claire noticed. Grant noticed too. That is the problem, he said. Every answer in this building begins with temporary repairs and ends with more money. Evelyn lifted her chin. This building has been standing longer than you have. Grant opened the folder. And age is not the same as stability. He began the inspection without waiting for permission. Claire followed him, though her attention remained divided between the reports and the people around her. Marcus walked several steps behind, quiet and watchful. The legal assistant began taking notes. Grant pointed toward a dark stain near the back wall. Water intrusion. Ethan spoke from behind the counter. Roof leak. Grant did not turn. That is another phrase for water intrusion. The landlord was notified in March. Grant looked at Evelyn. Was it repaired? The roof was patched, and the interior damaged, the wall dried. Grant pressed 2 fingers against the stain. Moisture remains. Ethan walked over and placed a small meter against the plaster. The display showed a low reading. It is dry. Grant looked at the tool. That device is not certified for this inspection. It is certified enough to tell wet from dry. Claire watched the exchange. Grant was the roof repair included in the updated file. He turned a page. The repair was described as incomplete. By whom? The field inspector. Name. Grant paused. The contractor was assigned through our regional office. Claire waited. Grant closed the folder. I can provide the full record. That was not my question. Ethan saw a small change in Claire's face. Not suspicion yet. Only attention. Grant moved toward the electrical panel near the kitchen entrance. The wiring in this building predates current commercial standards. Ethan joined them. The panel was replaced 6 years ago. The report says the circuits are overloaded. 2 outlets were overloaded during the holiday event. I separated them. Again, you are not a licensed inspector. No. I am the person Evelyn called when the lights went out. Grant opened the panel door. The breakers were labeled in Ethan's handwriting. Claire studied them. Did our inspector test the load after the repair? Grant flipped through the report. The larger issue is the age of the building. That is not an answer. Grant gave her a controlled smile. We can verify every technical point later. Ethan leaned against the wall. You already used those points to lower the offer. Grant's eyes hardened. Claire looked at Ethan. How much do you know about the offer enough to know it values the property like the building is about to collapse? It requires significant investment. It requires repairs. Those are not always different. They are when someone benefits from making the damage sound worse. Grant closed the electrical panel with more force than necessary. You are accusing this company of fraud. I'm asking why every report gets worse after you visit. The cafe had grown quieter around them. Walter lowered his newspaper. The two electricians stopped eating. Claire looked from Ethan to Grant. What does he mean? Grant laughed once. He means he has become emotionally attached to a failing business and believes that makes him an expert in corporate acquisitions. Ethan stepped closer. I mean, the counter support was solid in February. Your report says it shifted in April. The roof was repaired in March. Your report calls the leak active in May. The electrical load was corrected. Your report still lists it as unresolved. Grant's voice sharpened. Buildings decline. Not only on the days you inspect them. Claire held out her hand. Give me the latest report. Grant gave her the folder. She read several lines in silence. Ethan watched her expression change as she compared the dates. Grant shifted his weight. This property has been operating on borrowed time for years. Evelyn spoke from beside the register. It has been operating on coffee biscuits and people who keep showing up. Grant turned toward her. Sentiment does not repair foundations. No, Evelyn said, but neither does lying about them. Claire looked up. Mrs. Parker, has anyone outside Whitmore inspected the building? Evelyn's eyes lowered. I could not afford it. Grant opened his mouth. Claire raised one hand. He stopped. The legal assistant typed something into the tablet. Ethan returned to the espresso machine. He did not trust Claire yet. She was asking better questions, but the papers carried her company's name. The offer carried her signature block. Whatever Grant had done, he had done it under authority she had given him. Jenna placed a cup beside Ethan. Coffee. Thank you. You look like you need to. I usually do. She glanced toward Claire. She is the woman from the tire, yes. She is pretty. Ethan lifted the cup. She is here to buy the building. That was not my question. Ethan drank the coffee. Jenna smiled. Across the room, Claire had heard enough to know they were talking about her, though not enough to hear the words. Grant noticed her glance. He leaned closer. Claire, I understand that yesterday may have created an informal impression, but Ethan is not part of this transaction. Claire closed the report. He is part of the building. He performs odd jobs. He appears to know the property better than the inspector. Grant's smile disappeared. Marcus looked toward Ethan. Ethan was examining the espresso machine again. His movements were slow and precise. Marcus noticed the scars across his knuckles, the way he positioned his feet, and the way his attention moved through the room without appearing restless. Those were not the habits of a careless man. Claire returned the report to Grant. I want every supporting photograph and inspection note sent to my office today. Of course, and the names of everyone who entered this building during each review. Grant's hand tightened around the folder. That level of detail may take time. Then begin now. Ethan heard the order. So did Evelyn. Neither of them relaxed. Claire walked toward the counter. Lucy sat in her usual booth near the window, her backpack beside her and her sketchbook open. Ethan had allowed her to stay at the cafe because school had closed early for a teacher meeting. She had been drawing quietly since Claire entered. Claire stopped beside the booth. Hello again. Lucy looked up. You found the coffee. I did. You have not tried it. Claire glanced at the empty table. No one offered me any. Jenna called from behind the counter. I can make you one, Grant answered before Claire could. The machine has already shown electrical instability. Ethan looked at him. It is safe to operate. Grant's eyes moved toward the open panel. Your opinion is not sufficient. Claire turned to Ethan. Would you drink from it? I already have. Then I will too. Grant forced a laugh. That is hardly a safety standard. Claire sat across from Lucy. Plain coffee, please. Jenna reached for a cup. Grant remained near the counter watching. Ethan stepped beside the machine while Jenna prepared the coffee. He monitored the pressure gauge. The machine hissed. For several seconds everything worked normally. Then a sharp spark flashed beneath the rear panel. Jenna jumped backward. The lights flickered. A cup slipped from her hand and shattered. The entire cafe went still. Ethan immediately pulled the power cord from the wall. Do not touch the machine. Jenna pressed one hand against her chest. I did not. Are you burned? No. Claire stood. Grant moved quickly toward the machine. This is exactly what the report warned about. Ethan knelt. Everybody stay back. Grant pointed toward the smoking panel. Unsafe equipment, improper maintenance, untrained staff. Jenna looked at him. I did not do anything wrong. Grant ignored her. Claire walked behind the counter. What caused it I do not know yet, Ethan said. Grant held out one arm. Do not touch it. Ethan looked up. Move. This is now evidence of an unsafe operating environment. It is also a machine with live components. The power is disconnected. You do not know what the capacitors are holding. Grant hesitated. Ethan saw it. You have no idea how this machine works. That is irrelevant. It becomes relevant when you tell everyone else not to touch it. Marcus stepped closer. Let him make it safe. Grant turned toward Claire. We need photographs before anything is altered. Claire nodded to Marcus. Document it. Marcus removed his phone and took pictures of the machine, the outlet, the floor, and the damaged cup. Ethan waited. When Marcus finished, Ethan removed the rear panel. The smell of burned plastic drifted into the air. He shone the flashlight inside. The same red wire he had tightened the day before was blackened near the connection, but the damage did not look natural. The insulation had been nicked cleanly several inches below the terminal. Ethan touched the outer casing carefully. Claire watched him. What do you see? A damaged wire. Grant crossed his arms. So the machine failed. Ethan looked closer. It did. Then the report was correct. The report did not say someone cut the insulation. Grant became very still. Claire stepped nearer. Cut Ethan pointed with the screwdriver. There is a straight mark here. The wire heated at the weakest point. Grant leaned over the machine. You cannot possibly determine that from one mark. Ethan looked at him. No, but I can determine that insulation does not peel itself open in a straight line. Claire examined the wire without touching it. Could it have happened during an earlier repair? I would have seen it yesterday. Grant gave a dismissive breath. Unless you caused it. Jenna stared at him. Evelyn came from behind the register. What did you say? Grant looked toward Claire. He was the last person who worked on the machine. We cannot ignore that. Ethan stood slowly. You think I damaged it. I think all possibilities should be considered. You did not consider any possibility before blaming Jenna. That was different. How she was operating it. And I repaired it. Grant's voice rose. Exactly. Claire looked at Ethan. He met her gaze. For the first time since she entered, he saw uncertainty there. Not fear of him. Fear that she might be standing inside a situation she did not understand. Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth. If you think I damaged it, call an independent electrician. Grant shook his head. That would delay the review. Then delay it. The owner does not have that luxury. Evelyn's face tightened. Ethan turned toward her. What did he tell you? She looked away. Grant answered. I explained that unresolved safety issues may affect the acquisition deadline. Claire turned sharply. You tied the deadline to this inspection. I explained the commercial reality. That was not part of the approved communication. Grant's expression shifted. Claire, the seller, needed to understand the risks. The seller needed accurate information, and she received it. Ethan looked at the damaged wire. No. She received pressure. Claire took a slow breath. Grant, step away from the machine. He obeyed, though every line of his body resisted. Jenna began gathering the broken cup. Ethan noticed the movement. Leave it. I can clean it. Not with your hands. Grant glanced down at her. She should have been more careful. Jenna stopped. Ethan looked at him. The machine sparked. She dropped company property. It is a cup. It is still a loss. Jenna's face flushed. I said I was sorry. Grant looked at Claire. This is what I mean. No discipline, no procedures, no accountability. Jenna knelt to pick up a larger piece of ceramic. The service counter shifted under her shoulder. A plate near the edge slid off and broke beside her. She gasped. Grant stepped back from the pieces. Unbelievable. Jenna's hands began to shake. I barely touched it. Grant looked at Claire. This staff cannot safely operate a commercial space. Ethan crossed the floor and crouched beside Jenna. Do not move. I can clean it. There is glass under your knee. He carefully moved a broken piece away, then helped her stand. Jenna blinked rapidly, trying not to cry in front of everyone. Grant watched with open contempt. You cannot protect her from every mistake. Ethan turned toward the counter. The counter moved. It is unstable. That is in the report. Ethan knelt and examined the lower support. One bolt lay on the floor beneath the cabinet. He picked it up. The threads were clean. Too clean. He reached beneath the frame and found the empty hole where the bolt had been. This was loosened. Grant sighed. Or it fell out. Ethan held up the bolt. No rust, no stripped thread, no wood damage. You cannot prove someone touched it. I tightened this myself. When February. Grant smiled without warmth. Then perhaps your repair failed. Ethan stood. His voice remained quiet. Bolts fail under stress. They bend, threads strip, wood splits. This one was turned out. Claire stepped closer. How recently I cannot tell. Grant gestured toward the customers. This has become absurd. A handyman finds a loose bolt and suddenly imagines sabotage. Ethan placed the bolt on the counter between them. I did not say sabotage. You did not have to. Claire looked at Grant. You seem very concerned about the word. He stared at her. I am concerned that this inspection is being manipulated by someone with no authority. Ethan's eyes hardened. Authority is not the same as truth. Grant stepped toward him. And emotion is not the same as evidence. No, evidence is a cut wire and a loosened bolt. Grant pointed toward the door. You need to leave. Evelyn moved beside Ethan. This is my cafe, and he is interfering with a corporate review. He is helping me. He is making the situation worse. Evelyn's voice shook, but she did not lower it. You do not get to decide who belongs in my cafe. The room had grown silent again. Claire saw Walter watching from the window booth. She saw the two electricians exchange a look. She saw Jenna standing behind Ethan as though his presence gave her permission to breathe. Grant looked around the room and realized no one was supporting him. His face reddened. Claire spoke carefully. Grant, we are pausing the inspection. He turned toward her. That would be a mistake. It is not a request. The acquisition committee expects a recommendation today. They can wait. The investors will not. Claire's eyes narrowed. Then they can call me. Grant lowered his voice. You are allowing a local repairman to derail a multi-million-dollar project. Ethan heard him. So that is what this is. Grant looked over. What, not one cafe? Claire glanced at Ethan. He pointed toward the report. The offer makes no sense unless the whole block matters. Grant's jaw tightened. Ethan continued. The bookstore received an offer. The pottery shop received one. Same deadline, same warnings. Claire looked at Grant. Is that true? This district is part of a larger development strategy. Why was I not given the complete acquisition map you were? No. I was given 3 separate property summaries. Grant's silence lasted too long. Claire's legal assistant stopped typing and looked up. Ethan saw something pass between them. Not proof, recognition. Claire had just discovered that her own employee had decided what she was allowed to see. Lucy closed her sketchbook. The soft sound drew Claire's attention. She walked toward the booth. What are you drawing? Lucy turned the sketchbook around. The page showed a tall glass building under a dark sky. A crack ran from the roof to the foundation. At the top stood a woman in a blue suit. At the bottom, small figures pressed their hands against the walls trying to keep the building upright. Claire sat across from her. Why is it broken? Lucy touched the crack with the purple crayon. Because nobody at the top can hear it. Claire looked at the woman in the drawing. Is that me? Lucy nodded. Do I look mean? No. Then why do I look sad? Lucy considered the question. Because everybody is scared to tell you something. Claire looked across the cafe. Grant stood near the door holding the inspection folder against his side. Evelyn watched him with years of fear held behind her eyes. Jenna stared at the floor. Ethan stood beside the damaged counter, one hand resting near the loosened bolt. Claire looked back at Lucy. What are they scared to tell me? Lucy glanced toward Ethan. My dad says people do not always lie with words. Ethan heard her. Lucy. She looked at him. What, that was a private conversation. You said it in the truck. That still counts. Claire almost smiled, but the weight in the room stopped it. Grant walked toward the booth. Claire, we should continue this discussion outside. Lucy stiffened. Ethan noticed immediately. He moved between Grant and the booth. She is a child. Grant looked at him. She is involving herself in an adult matter. She is drawing. She is repeating your accusations. Ethan lowered his voice. Do not speak to her like that. Grant's expression sharpened. You need to remember your place. Ethan looked around the Bluebird, at Evelyn, at Jenna, at Lucy. Then he looked directly at Grant. My place is wherever someone thinks they can treat people like this. The rain struck the windows harder. Behind Ethan, Lucy's purple crayon moved once across the page, then stopped. Grant stood only a few feet away, one hand pressed against the inspection folder, as though the papers inside could still give him control of the room. You are making a serious mistake, he said. Ethan did not move. Move. No, I am asking you to stop speaking to my daughter. Grant gave a short, humorless laugh. You brought her into a business dispute. She was sitting in a booth drawing. She repeated your accusations. She repeated something she heard her father say. That does not give you the right to intimidate her. Claire rose from the booth. Grant stepped away. He looked at her surprised by the firmness in her voice. I'm trying to protect this review. You are speaking to an 8-year-old. An 8-year-old who is being used to influence you. Lucy lowered her eyes to the sketchbook. Ethan saw her shoulders tighten. He took one step closer to Grant. My daughter is not a strategy. Grant's gaze dropped briefly to Ethan's hands. They were open at his sides. That seemed to encourage him. You have spent all morning turning ordinary maintenance failures into some kind of conspiracy. Now you are hiding behind a child because you have no actual authority here. Ethan's expression remained steady. You keep using that word. Authority. Yes. Grant shifted the folder beneath his arm. It matters. Not as much as you think. It determines who makes decisions. It does not determine who is right. The two electricians near the front window stopped pretending to eat. Walter lowered the newspaper completely. Jenna stood behind the register, one hand wrapped around the edge of the counter. Evelyn remained beside her, pale but upright. Claire looked from Ethan to Grant. She had spent years inside rooms where men fought for control without raising their voices. Board meetings, investor dinners, private negotiations behind hotel doors. She knew the language of dominance when she heard it. Grant was no longer speaking about the cafe. He was speaking about Ethan's place in the world. Grant stepped closer. Men like you always think being useful makes you important. Ethan looked at him. What kind of men are those? The kind who confuse fixing a sink with understanding a business. And men like you confuse understanding a business with owning the people inside it. A murmur moved through the cafe. Grant turned toward the customers. Perhaps everyone should remember that Whitmore Urban Development is considering a substantial investment in this district. Evelyn's voice came from behind him. You are considering taking it. Grant faced her. We are offering struggling owners a way out, at half the value. Based on the condition of the properties. The condition you keep changing on paper. Claire looked sharply at Evelyn. Grant's face hardened. You should be careful. The warning was quiet. That made it worse. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the counter. Ethan saw it. He also saw Jenna look down as though she had heard the same tone before. Grant turned back to Ethan. You have made your point. Leave the building. No, this is not your property. No, it belongs to Evelyn. Then she can ask you to leave. Evelyn swallowed. For one long second, fear held her in place. Grant watched her. He knew exactly what he was doing. The deadline sat behind her eyes. The rent, the insurance payment, the food supplier. The possibility that one more report could close the Bluebird before she had time to fight. Ethan did not look at her. He would not make her prove her courage for him. Then Evelyn stepped away from the counter. "He stays." Her voice shook. Grant stared at her. Evelyn lifted her chin. "Ethan stays." Jenna moved beside her. "So do I." Grant looked around the cafe. Walter folded his newspaper and placed it on the table. One of the electricians pushed his plate away. The young mother near the window picked up her baby and held the child closer. No one spoke, but the room had changed. Grant could feel it. Claire could too. For the first time that morning, Grant was not the person everyone feared most. He was simply the loudest man in a room that had stopped believing him. Claire stepped toward him. "The inspection is over." Grant turned. "You cannot be serious." "I am. You came here to make a decision. I have made one. No recommendation leaves this building until every report is reviewed." His jaw tightened. "The committee expects an answer today. They will receive an explanation. The investors will not accept a delay because a handyman found one loose bolt." Claire's eyes remained on him. "This is no longer about one bolt." Grant lowered his voice. "You are allowing personal feelings to interfere with a major acquisition." Ethan heard the accusation beneath the words. So did Claire. Her face cooled. "My judgment is not yours to evaluate. I have worked on this district for 11 months, and yet I am learning details today that never appeared in your summaries. Because those details were not relevant. The condition of the properties is relevant. The broader strategy is relevant. Then why did you separate the acquisitions?" Grant's eyes shifted toward the legal assistant. She stood near the wall with the tablet held against her chest. Claire followed his glance. "Rachel," she said. The assistant straightened. "Do you have the regional acquisition map?" Rachel hesitated. "I have the individual parcel files. I asked for the full map. I was told the consolidated version was still being updated." Claire looked at Grant. "By whom?" He did not answer. The rain grew louder against the windows. Ethan watched Claire absorb the silence. This was the first moment she allowed herself to see that Grant had not merely been aggressive. He had controlled the information reaching her. She closed her portfolio. "Send every file to my office now," Grant spoke carefully. "Claire, we should discuss this privately." "No. There are commercial issues involved. There are always commercial issues involved. Send the files. I will handle it." Claire's voice lowered. "That is the problem." Grant's face reddened. Ethan turned away from him and walked toward the damaged espresso machine. He wanted to examine the wire again before anyone touched it. The clean cut in the insulation bothered him. So did the loose counterbolt. 2 failures in 2 separate places. Both appeared soon after Grant's visits. He crouched beside the machine. Lucy climbed out of the booth and moved toward him. Ethan looked over his shoulder. "Stay with Evelyn. I am okay. I know. Stay with Evelyn anyway." Lucy stopped near the end of the counter. Her sketchbook remained pressed to her chest. Grant watched them. Something bitter entered his expression. "Maybe you should spend less time playing hero in this cafe and more time giving your daughter a normal life." The words crossed the room like a thrown object. Ethan's hand stopped beside the machine. Claire turned immediately. Grant. But he had already seen the change in Ethan. Not anger, stillness. It was the stillness of a man who had spent years learning which pain belonged to him and which pain he would never allow anyone to place on his child. Grant mistook it for weakness. "You drag her from repair job to repair job," he continued. "She does homework in a failing business, while you work for people who cannot pay you." Ethan stood. "Do not speak about my daughter." Grant smiled. "Why?" "Because the truth hurts." Claire stepped between them. "That is enough." Grant looked at her. "You wanted the truth about this place. He is part of it. He keeps it alive with temporary repairs while his own life falls apart." Ethan's voice was quiet. "Move away from her." Grant glanced toward Lucy. She stood beside Evelyn now, but her eyes were fixed on her father. Maybe someone should tell her that kindness does not pay a mortgage. Ethan took one step forward. "You can say whatever you want about me." Grant's smile widened. "You think I need your permission? You leave my daughter out of it." The cafe seemed to contract around them. Claire saw Marcus move closer from the wall, not toward Ethan, toward Grant. Grant noticed too. His humiliation deepened. He had entered the cafe expecting to guide Claire through a simple acquisition review. Instead, his reports were being questioned. The owner had defied him. The staff had stopped shrinking, and Claire was watching him as though she no longer recognized the man she had trusted. He looked at Ethan and found an easier target. "You really believe standing in front of people makes you brave?" Ethan said nothing. "You fix their machines, you carry their boxes, you let them call you whenever something breaks because it makes you feel necessary." Ethan's gaze did not leave him. Grant stepped closer. "But when the day ends, you still go home to an empty house." Lucy's face changed. Ethan saw it. He moved between her and Grant. Claire spoke again. Grant stepped back. He ignored her. "At least Whitmore can offer this neighborhood a future. What are you offering? A broken coffee machine and stories about how things used to be." Ethan's eyes hardened. "A future that removes everyone who lives here is not a future for them. It is progress. It is profit. There is nothing wrong with profit. No. There is something wrong with creating fear so people sell before they understand what they own." Grant's nostrils flared. "You have no proof. I have enough questions to make you nervous." Grant moved within inches of him. "You are a repairman. Yes, you are not an investigator. No, you are not a lawyer. No, you are not a businessman." Ethan looked toward Evelyn Jenna and the customers who had gathered near the counter. "Maybe not." Grant leaned closer. "Then remember your place." Ethan's voice fell almost to a whisper. "My place is between you and the people you think cannot stop you." Grant looked toward Claire. He expected her to intervene on his behalf. She did not. He looked toward Marcus. Marcus remained still. Grant's face tightened with the rage of a man discovering that a title could not protect him from being seen clearly. He placed both hands against Ethan's chest and shoved. The force sent Ethan backward. His hip struck the corner of a table. The table tipped. A chair scraped across the floor. A ceramic mug fell and shattered. Hot coffee spread across the white tile. Lucy gasped. Her purple crayon slipped from her fingers. It rolled beneath the edge of the counter, passed through the coffee, and stopped beside Ethan's hand. The old speaker above the kitchen door crackled. The folk song playing through it dissolved into static. Then the music stopped. The whole cafe went silent. Ethan lay beside the overturned chair. Pain moved sharply along his ribs. For 1 second he could hear nothing except the rain and Lucy's breathing. Grant stood over him. His chest rose and fell quickly. He had expected Ethan to spring up. He had expected a punch, a curse, anything he could use. Ethan did not look at him. He looked at Lucy. She stood frozen beside Evelyn. Her face had gone pale. Her lower lip trembled. Ethan reached for the purple crayon. Coffee had stained the paper wrapper. He wiped it against his sleeve and held it up where she could see it. "I'm okay, Luce." She did not answer. Ethan pressed one hand against the floor and slowly sat up. His ribs protested. He took one careful breath. Grant's polished shoe stood inches from the broken mug. Ethan ignored it. He looked toward Jenna. The overturned chair had struck her ankle. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "I'm fine. Evelyn, I'm all right." Only then did Ethan stand. He moved slowly, not because he was afraid of Grant, but because Lucy was watching every movement. His hands remained open at his sides. Grant stared at him. "That is what I thought." Ethan looked down at the coffee on his shirt. "What did you think, that you would back down?" Ethan raised his eyes. "No." Grant's confidence faltered. Ethan stepped around the broken mug and moved toward Lucy. Grant grabbed his shoulder. Marcus shifted forward. Ethan moved first. He caught Grant's wrist, turned his body, and redirected the arm across the edge of the table. Grant gasped as his chest struck the wood. Ethan placed one hand between Grant's shoulder blades and held the wrist at an angle that prevented him from turning. The movement was fast controlled and almost quiet. There was no punch, no blow to the face, no unnecessary pressure. Marcus stopped. He recognized the restraint immediately. Grant struggled. Ethan increased the pressure just enough to keep him still. "My daughter is watching," Ethan said near his ear. Grant tried to pull free. Ethan's voice remained calm. "That is the only reason you are still standing." Claire stared at Ethan. This was not the movement of a man who had lost control. It was the movement of a man using exactly as much control as the moment required. Grant twisted again. Ethan held him. "You wanted me angry," Ethan said. Grant breathed hard against the table. "You wanted me to hit you because an angry man is easy to blame." Ethan looked toward Lucy. Her eyes were wide, but she was no longer shaking. "You were counting on me becoming the story." He released Grant and stepped back. Grant turned quickly, one hand rubbing his wrist. "You assaulted me." Claire's voice cut across the room. "No." Everyone looked at her. She stood beside the fallen chair, her face pale but composed. "I watched you shove him. I watched you grab him again after he walked away." Grant pointed toward Ethan. "He could have broken my arm, but he did not. You cannot take his side." Claire looked at the coffee spreading beneath the table. "This is not about sides. You are choosing a stranger over your regional director." Claire lifted her eyes to him. "No, I am choosing what I saw over what you reported." Grant stared at her. Something in the room released. Not relief, not yet, but the fear had shifted. Claire turned toward Marcus. "Keep Mr. Holloway away from everyone in this building." Marcus stepped between Grant and Ethan. "Come with me." Grant did not move. "I am not going anywhere." Marcus's voice remained polite. "You are moving away from the family." Grant looked toward Claire. "Think carefully. I am. This project represents millions of dollars." Claire's expression did not change. "And you just attacked a man in front of witnesses." Grant glanced around. Every face in the cafe was turned toward him. Walter had taken out his phone. One of the electricians stood near the door. Jenna held the fallen chair upright with shaking hands. Evelyn had one arm around Lucy's shoulders. Grant lowered his voice. "You do not understand what you are interrupting." Claire stepped closer. "Then explain it." He said nothing. Ethan bent to pick up the broken pieces of the mug. Jenna moved toward him. "I can do that. Stay back. There are small pieces." His voice was gentle, the same voice he used with Lucy when she woke from a nightmare. Claire watched him gather the ceramic into a towel. He had just been attacked, yet his first concern remained the people around him. Then Ethan stopped. The smell had returned. Burned plastic, faint but unmistakable. He looked toward the espresso machine. The rear access panel hung slightly open. He had closed it after examining the damaged wire. He was certain of that. Ethan set down the towel and crossed the room. Claire followed his gaze. "What is it, the panel? What about it?" It was closed. Grant looked toward the machine. Ethan noticed. He crouched and inspected the lock. The metal around the keyway carried a fresh scrape. He looked at the badge clipped near Grant's jacket pocket. Several keys hung from a small ring. One was narrow and silver, the kind used on commercial appliance panels. Ethan stood. "Evelyn, who has a key to this machine, you do. Anyone else, my husband had one. I do not know where his went. Did you give Grant access?" "No," Grant scoffed. "This is ridiculous." Ethan reached toward the machine. Grant moved forward. Marcus blocked him with one arm. Ethan opened the panel. The damaged red wire hung inside. He studied the insulation again, this time under the brighter beam of his flashlight. The cut was clean. The copper beneath it had heated only after the insulation was removed. Ethan looked toward the counter support. A loosened bolt, a cut wire. 2 failures placed where they would be noticed during an inspection. Claire stood beside him. "Could the wire have split from age? No." "How certain are you?" Ethan pointed at the exposed section. "Old insulation cracks. It flakes. It does not open in one straight line." Grant laughed. "You are making claims you cannot prove." Ethan did not look at him. "You are right." Grant's expression changed slightly. Ethan turned toward the rear hallway. "There may be proof." Evelyn followed his gaze. The camera. Claire looked toward the small black security camera mounted above the kitchen entrance. Evelyn shook her head. "It stopped working months ago. It stopped sending video to your phone. You told me it was offline." "It is offline." Ethan walked beneath it. "But it records to a memory card when the network disconnects." Grant's face lost color, only for a second. Claire saw it. So did Marcus. Ethan reached into his toolbox for a small ladder. Grant moved toward the back door. Marcus stepped into his path. "Where are you going?" Grant stopped. "I need to make a call. You can make it here. This is company business." Claire spoke without turning. Your company phone stays in your pocket. Grant stared at her. Ethan placed the ladder beneath the camera and climbed. Dust covered the casing. He opened the side compartment. A small blue memory card rested inside. He removed it and climbed down. Lucy came closer, still holding the stained purple crayon. Ethan knelt in front of her. You okay? She looked at the bruise forming beneath his shirt. You said you were okay? I am. That does not mean it did not hurt. Ethan glanced at the crayon in her hand. No, it does not. Lucy touched his cheek. You did not hit him. No. Were you scared Ethan considered lying? He did not. I was scared you would think being strong meant hurting him back. Lucy looked toward Grant. What does it mean Ethan's eyes remained on hers? It means I came back to you. Claire heard him. Her expression softened, then tightened again as she looked toward the memory card in his hand. Rachel, the legal assistant, brought Claire's laptop to the nearest table. Ethan inserted the card into a small adapter from his toolbox. The computer recognized the files. Rows of dated video clips appeared on the screen. Grant stood beside Marcus, silent now. Evelyn moved to Ethan's other side. Jenna joined her. Claire pulled out a chair. Open the footage from yesterday. Ethan clicked the folder. A grainy image of the empty Bluebird appeared. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 9:43 p.m. rain moved against the dark windows. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a figure entered through the rear hallway. Grant looked at the screen. No one looked at him. The cafe became silent for the second time that day. The first silence had followed violence. This one waited for the truth. On the laptop screen, the shadowed figure crossed the empty cafe and moved beneath the rear hallway light. The image sharpened. Grant Holloway stepped into view. No one in the Bluebird spoke. Grant wore the same charcoal coat he had worn during the previous inspection. His face appeared pale beneath the grainy security light. He looked toward the front windows, waited several seconds, then removed a ring of keys from his pocket. Ethan glanced at the keys hanging from Grant's company badge. The narrow silver key was there. On the recording, Grant walked behind the service counter and tried 2 keys before the third opened the rear panel of the espresso machine. Evelyn covered her mouth. Jenna stared at the screen. Claire remained perfectly still, but the hand resting beside the laptop slowly closed into a fist. The video had no sound from that camera. Only the timestamp moved as Grant crouched beside the machine. He reached into his coat and removed a small tool. Wire cutters. Lucy stood near Ethan, one hand wrapped around his fingers. On the screen, Grant separated a red wire from the others, pressed the cutters against its insulation, and made one careful cut. Not enough to sever the copper completely. Enough to weaken it. Enough to make it fail when the machine heated. Grant closed the panel, wiped the metal surface with a cloth, then turned toward the counter. He disappeared from the first camera. Ethan opened the next file. A second angle showed Grant kneeling beneath the service counter. He placed a wrench around the support bolt and slowly turned it. Once, twice, again, the bolt loosened beneath his hand. Grant stopped before it fell out, leaving it barely attached to the frame. Jenna made a broken sound in her throat. That plate almost hit me. Ethan looked at her. She was not crying yet. She seemed too shocked for tears. Evelyn put an arm around her shoulders. Grant finally spoke. This is not what it looks like. Walter laughed from his booth, but there was no humor in it. Every face turned toward Grant. He looked at Claire. The equipment was already unsafe. I was documenting how easily it could fail. Claire's eyes did not move from the screen. You cut the wire. I exposed a pre-existing weakness. You loosened the counter to test structural stability. Ethan turned toward him. You tested it by leaving people underneath it. Grant ignored him. He addressed Claire as though the rest of the cafe no longer existed. You know how these inspections work. We have to identify the worst possible outcome. Claire looked at the frozen image of his hand around the wrench. No. We identify existing risks. We do not create them. Grant's voice tightened. You are reacting emotionally. Claire slowly turned in her chair. You attacked a man in front of his child. You sabotaged commercial equipment. You placed employees at risk. Do not speak to me about emotion. Grant glanced at Rachel, the legal assistant. You understand the liability here. The company cannot treat an internal recording as conclusive without proper review. Rachel held the tablet against her chest. The original file metadata is intact. Grant looked at her. You work for Whitmore. I work for the legal department. You report to me on regional matters. Not anymore. The words landed quietly. Claire looked back at the laptop. Is there more footage? Ethan checked the folder. One clip from the rear entrance. He opened it. The image came from a smaller camera near the kitchen door. The angle showed Grant leaving the cafe several minutes after the sabotage. This camera carried sound. At first there was only rain against the metal awning. Then Grant's phone rang. He answered while standing beneath the camera. His recorded voice filled the cafe. It is done. A pause followed. Grant looked toward the empty street. No. The machine will fail during service. The counter should shift with enough weight. Evelyn's grip tightened around Jenna. Grant continued. Once Parker fails inspection, she takes the offer. When the Bluebird goes, the bookstore and pottery shop stop pretending they can hold out. Claire's face lost all color. On the recording, Grant laughed softly. The transit announcement comes next month. We close before that, and the block triples in value. The person on the other end said something the camera could not capture. Grant replied, Whitmore gets the properties. The investors get their return. I get the regional promotion. He ended the call and disappeared into the rain. The file stopped. The laptop returned to a black screen. No one moved. Ethan felt Lucy's small fingers tighten around his hand. He looked down at her. Her eyes were not on Grant. They were on Claire. Claire stared at her own reflection in the dark laptop screen. For years, people had praised her ability to remain calm. Investors called it discipline. Board members called it leadership. Her father had once called it hiding. Now she sat inside that silence and felt every excuse she had ever accepted begin to collapse. Grant spoke first. That call is being misunderstood. Claire did not look at him. Who were you speaking to? I do not remember. It was yesterday. I make dozens of calls. Who were you speaking to? Grant's jaw tightened. A contractor. Name. I would need to check. Claire turned to Rachel. Preserve every file on that memory card. Make 2 copies. One goes to general counsel. One goes to outside counsel. Rachel nodded and reached for the laptop. Grant stepped forward. That footage belongs to the property owner. You cannot remove it without authorization. Evelyn looked at him. She has my authorization. Grant's eyes moved to Marcus. You are letting this happen. Marcus stood with both hands folded in front of him. I am watching it happen. Claire rose. Grant, give Marcus your phone badge keys and laptop. You cannot suspend me in the middle of an acquisition. I am not suspending you in the middle of an acquisition. Grant looked almost relieved. Claire finished. I am suspending every acquisition in this district. The relief vanished. You cannot do that. I just did. The board approved the regional strategy. The board approved a strategy based on your reports. The returns are real. The conditions were not. Grant lowered his voice. Claire, think about what you are risking. She looked around the cafe, at the broken mug on the floor, at Jenna's trembling hands, at Lucy holding a stained purple crayon, at Ethan, whose shirt still carried the coffee from the table Grant had thrown him into. Then she looked at Grant. I am beginning to. Rachel opened several company files on her tablet. Ms. Whitmore. Claire turned. Rachel looked uneasy. I searched Grant's recent property reports. The Bluebird is not the only file with repeated condition changes. How many? At least 7 within this district. Ethan watched Claire's expression. Show me. Rachel placed the tablet on the table. A map of the neighborhood appeared divided into colored parcels. The Bluebird sat at the center. The bookstore next door was marked in red. The pottery shop was marked in red. A bakery 2 streets away was marked as acquired. Several small homes behind the commercial block were listed as pending review. Claire enlarged the file. The bakery had sold 3 months earlier for less than half of its estimated value after repairs. Its inspection history showed a series of rapidly worsening problems. Electrical instability, roof damage, foundation movement, unsafe rear access. The language matched the Bluebird report almost word for word. Claire opened another file. The same pattern appeared. Then another. Grant moved toward the door. Marcus stepped in front of him. I need air. You can breathe here. Grant glared at him. This is unlawful detention. Marcus's voice remained even. The front door is not locked. You are free to leave after you return company property. Grant looked toward Claire. You are allowing security to threaten me. Claire said nothing. Grant removed his badge and threw it onto the nearest table. The keys followed. He pulled his phone from his pocket but kept it in his hand. Marcus extended his palm. The phone. It is personal. It is company issued. Grant looked at Claire again. She did not rescue him. He placed the phone in Marcus's hand. Ethan watched the exchange without satisfaction. He had imagined during quieter moments what it might feel like to see a man like Grant lose power. He had expected relief. Instead, he felt tired. Grant had not become smaller. Everyone else had simply stopped pretending he was large. Lucy tugged gently at Ethan's hand. Can I show her something? Ethan looked down. Show who, Claire? He studied her face. Why, because she looks like she forgot something. Lucy carried her sketchbook to the table. Claire noticed her approaching and lowered herself into the chair. Lucy placed the book in front of her. The first page showed Ethan beneath the Bluebird sign holding a toolbox in one hand and Lucy's backpack in the other. Claire touched the corner of the paper. You draw him a lot. He is always doing something. Lucy turned the page. Ethan stood beside an elderly woman's furnace while snow covered the windows. Claire looked toward him. What happened there? Lucy answered before Ethan could. Mrs. Caldwell's heat stopped during the big storm. She did not have enough money for a new furnace. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. It needed a motor. Lucy pointed at the drawing. Dad used the motor from our garage heater. Claire looked at him. What did you use at home, blankets? Lucy turned another page. Ethan knelt beside Jenna's old car in the Bluebird parking lot. Jenna leaned closer. That was the morning of my nursing exam. Lucy nodded. Her car would not start. Jenna looked at Claire. He stayed up most of the night replacing the starter. He would not take money. Ethan glanced at her. You brought coffee. You drink coffee here for free. Then we are even. Lucy turned the page again. A teenage boy sat behind the cafe with his knees pulled to his chest. Ethan placed a paper bag beside him. Claire recognized the boy from the rebuilding map. His family had rented a small apartment behind the bakery before the property sold. What happened to him, she asked. Evelyn answered. His mother lost her job. They were sleeping in their car for a while. Claire looked at the drawing. Did Ethan find them housing? No, Ethan said. A church did. You called the church. I knew someone. You also paid for their motel room, Evelyn said. Ethan looked at her. That was private. So was my electric bill, apparently. Lucy turned another page. This one showed Ethan sitting beside her bed while a lamp glowed in the dark. A thermometer rested on the nightstand. The next page showed Ethan asleep at the kitchen table, his head resting on folded arms. An unpaid bill lay beside him. Then Lucy turned to a picture she had never shown anyone. Ethan sat alone near the kitchen window. In one hand he held Rachel's wedding ring. Above him, Lucy had drawn a silver star. Ethan stopped breathing for a moment. Lucy. She looked at him. I saw you. He did not know what to say. Claire studied the drawing, then looked toward the pale line around Ethan's ring finger. Lucy rested one hand on the page. My mom died when I was 5. Claire's voice softened. I'm sorry. Dad says being sorry is not bad, but people say it when they do not know what else to say. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Lucy, it is true. Claire almost smiled. Yes, she said, it is. Lucy looked at the drawing. He fixes things when he misses her. Ethan looked toward the window. Rain moved down the glass in long, uneven lines. Lucy continued. He says machines make sense because they show you where they hurt. Claire looked at Ethan. And people do not. Ethan met her eyes. People learn to hide the damage. The room became quiet again, though this silence felt different. Grant shifted near Marcus. This has nothing to do with the company investigation. Claire looked at him. It has everything to do with it. It is a collection of sentimental stories. No, Claire said. It is a record of what you failed to understand. Grant shook his head. You cannot run a corporation based on children's drawings. Claire looked down at the page showing the cracked tower. No, but I should not have run one based only on your reports. Lucy closed the sketchbook. Claire kept one hand on the cover. My father owned a hardware store, she said. No one had asked, but the words came anyway. It stood outside Charlotte for almost 30 years. A development group bought the shopping center. They raised the rent until every independent store left. Ethan listened. My father lost everything, Claire continued. He started Whitmore because he believed development could strengthen a neighborhood without erasing it. Grant looked away. Claire's voice remained calm, though something beneath it had begun to break. After he died, I took over. The company was smaller then. Investors wanted growth. The board wanted expansion. Every year the targets got larger. She looked at the property map on Rachel's tablet. Grant brought me numbers, faster acquisitions, lower costs, higher projections. Ethan spoke quietly. And you stopped asking how he got them. Claire looked at him. Yes. The word carried no defense. Grant stepped forward. You approved every regional target. Claire turned toward him. I did. You rewarded performance. I did. You wanted these properties secured before the transit announcement. Claire's face tightened. I wanted legal acquisitions based on honest valuations. You wanted results, and you gave me crimes. Grant laughed bitterly. You cannot separate yourself from this now. Claire looked around the cafe. I am not trying to. The answer silenced him. Rachel held up the tablet. General Counsel is on the line. Claire took the device and moved toward the far end of the counter. Her voice became precise. Freeze every pending acquisition connected to Grant Holloway. Restrict his system access. Preserve his email calls, expense reports, inspection files, and contractor communications. She listened. No, do not contact regional management first. Contact outside counsel and the board ethics committee. Another pause. Yes, law enforcement as well. Grant's head snapped toward her. Claire, she continued speaking. We have evidence of property damage, coercion, and possible fraud. I want independent inspectors assigned to every affected property. The voice on the tablet responded. Claire looked at Grant. No. Mr. Holloway is no longer authorized to act on behalf of the company. She ended the call. Rachel whispered. The board is going to react. Claire handed back the tablet. They should. They may remove you. Claire looked toward Evelyn and Jenna. Then they can remove me after the records are preserved. Ethan studied her. He saw fear in her face now. Not fear of Grant. Fear of losing everything she had spent years building. She was acting anyway. That mattered. But it did not erase what had already happened. Claire approached Ethan near the damaged machine. I should have seen this. He looked at the cut wire. You should have asked why every report made desperate people more desperate. I trusted the wrong person. That makes him responsible for what he did. Claire waited. Ethan looked at her. It does not make the company innocent. Her expression tightened, but she did not look away. No, you cannot fire one man and pretend the system worked, I know. Do you? Claire glanced toward Grant, then toward the acquisition map. I know that I rewarded him for bringing me outcomes. I know I did not ask what those outcomes cost, the people who had no seat in the room. Ethan said nothing. Claire lowered her voice. Tell me where to start. Do not ask me to solve your company. I am asking how to stop causing more damage. Ethan considered her words. Start by listening when nobody speaking can help your career. Claire held his gaze. A sharp sting moved through Ethan's palm. He looked down. A thin line of blood had appeared where a piece of ceramic had cut his skin. Claire noticed. You are hurt. It is small. She reached for a clean cloth beside the sink. Ethan pulled his hand back. I can handle it. I know. She waited. That answer made him look at her. Claire held out the cloth without moving closer. Ethan gave her his hand. She wrapped the fabric around his palm carefully. Her fingers were cool. His were rough and warm. For one quiet second, the noise of the cafe seemed distant. Claire tied the cloth. You always refuse help, only when I think it comes with paperwork. A faint smile touched her mouth. No paperwork. Then I may survive. Lucy watched them from beside Evelyn. She opened her sketchbook just enough to hide her smile. Red and blue lights appeared against the rain-covered windows. A police vehicle stopped outside. Grant looked toward the door. Claire released Ethan's hand. Marcus moved beside Grant. Two officers entered the cafe and spoke briefly with Rachel and Evelyn. One officer approached Grant. "We need to ask you some questions." Grant looked at Claire. "You are destroying your own company for these people." Claire opened the front door. Rain-scented air moved through the cafe. "No," she said. "I am finding out what kind of company I actually run." Grant was escorted outside. No one applauded. Ethan did not smile. Lucy slipped her hand into his. Through the window, Grant disappeared beneath the flashing lights. Behind them, the Bluebird remained damaged. The machine was silent. The counter leaned slightly to one side. Coffee still stained the floor. Claire looked around the room, finally seeing not a property waiting to be acquired, but a place her company had nearly taught itself to destroy. Evelyn picked up the broken Bluebird mug and placed its largest pieces on the counter. "We are closed for the day," she said. Walter stood and reached for his coat. Then he looked toward the damaged counter. "No," he said quietly. "You are not." He carried his empty cup to the kitchen. One of the electricians lifted the fallen chair. Jenna found a broom. The young mother began wiping coffee from the floor while her baby slept against her shoulder. Ethan picked up his toolbox. Claire reached for the other side. He looked at her hand on the handle. "You do not know where that goes." She met his eyes. "Then show me." Together they carried it toward the broken machine. Claire took the heavier side without being asked. Ethan noticed, but he said nothing. Around them, the Bluebird moved again. Walter stacked cups near the sink. The two electricians lifted the damaged section of the counter and placed wooden blocks beneath it. Jenna swept ceramic fragments into a dustpan while Evelyn stood near the register staring at the room as though she had awakened inside someone else's life. Outside, the police lights disappeared into the rain. Inside, no one spoke Grant's name. Ethan set the toolbox on the floor. Claire released the handle and looked at the espresso machine. "Can it be repaired?" "Yes." "How long with the right parts? A few days. And the counter a week." Claire looked toward the ceiling, stained the worn floorboards and the aging wiring. And everything else, Ethan followed her eyes. "That depends on what you mean by everything. I mean whatever it takes to make this place safe." Evelyn heard her. "No." Claire turned. Evelyn stood behind the counter with both hands pressed against the wood. "No contracts. No ownership percentage. No company name on my windows. I did not ask for any of those things, not yet." Claire walked closer. "Mrs. Parker, my employee, damaged your property. Your company tried to buy it while he was damaging it." "Yes." The answer stopped Evelyn. Claire did not soften it. She did not say Grant acted alone. She did not say Whitmore had been deceived. She did not say she had never approved his methods. She simply stood inside the truth. "My company benefited from the pressure he created," she said. "That makes the company responsible for repairing the damage." Evelyn looked at Ethan. He did not nod. He did not tell her what to do. The cafe belonged to her. So did the decision. Evelyn looked back at Claire. "I want a lawyer. You should have one. One who does not work for Whitmore. I will pay for independent counsel chosen by you. And the payment will not become part of some agreement." No, Evelyn studied her face. "You say that easily. I am trying to say it clearly." Ethan closed the toolbox. "Put it in writing." Claire looked at him. "I will. No promises made in this room. No handshake agreement. Everything in writing." Claire nodded. "That is fair. It is necessary." Her eyes held his. "Yes," she said. "It is." 6 days later, the Bluebird Café closed its doors. A handwritten sign hung in the front window. "Repairs in progress. Coffee will return." Evelyn had refused the polished notice Whitmore's communications department offered to print. She wrote the message herself with a blue marker and taped Lucy's drawing of the cafe beneath it. The investigation had grown beyond one damaged machine. Independent inspectors found altered photographs in 3 property reports. 2 contractors admitted that Grant had pressured them to describe manageable repairs as structural failures. A former Whitmore employee turned over emails showing that acquisition bonuses had been tied to how far below market value regional directors could secure properties. Grant had not invented the pressure. He had learned how to exploit it. Claire spent most of that week in Charlotte, seated before the board of directors beneath a wall of dark glass. The boardroom overlooked the city. From the 32nd floor, neighborhoods appeared neat and silent. Streets became lines. Buildings became shapes. People disappeared completely. Claire sat at one end of the table while 12 board members reviewed the preliminary findings. A man named Richard Dalton closed the report in front of him. You are proposing that we suspend every acquisition connected to the Asheville district. Yes. That represents 11 months of work. It represents 11 months of compromised information. We do not know that every file was compromised. We know enough to stop using them. A woman near the window adjusted her glasses. You also authorized restitution before receiving board approval. I authorized emergency repairs to property damaged by a company executive, former executive. He was employed when the damage occurred. Richard leaned back in his chair. You are exposing the company to broader liability. Claire looked at him. The liability already exists. You are making public statements that strengthen claims against us. I am acknowledging facts supported by recorded evidence. You are the chief executive officer. Your responsibility is to protect shareholder value. My responsibility is also to prevent this company from manufacturing losses for other people. The room became quiet. Richard opened another document. You are emotionally involved. Claire thought of the broken mug. She thought of Jenna kneeling beside the glass while Grant mocked her. She thought of Lucy's drawing of the cracked tower. Then she thought of Ethan's hand in hers while she wrapped the cut across his palm. I was emotionally absent, she said. That caused more damage. Several board members looked away. Richard closed the folder. If the district review delays the transit development, investors may demand leadership changes. Claire folded her hands on the table. Then they can demand them. You are willing to lose your position over one cafe. Claire looked through the glass wall toward the city below. No, I am willing to lose it over what one cafe proved. The vote to remove her did not happen that day. Neither did the vote to protect her. The board appointed an independent committee, froze the district acquisitions, and ordered Claire to limit public statements while the review continued. It was not victory. It was time. Back in Asheville, Ethan stood on a ladder inside the Bluebird pulling damaged wire through a section of conduit. Lucy sat at a nearby table doing homework. The cafe looked larger without customers. Chairs were stacked against the wall. The espresso machine rested in pieces across the counter. Dust covered the floor. Sunlight came through the front windows in pale rectangles. Jenna entered carrying 2 paper bags. I brought lunch. Ethan did not look down. Did Evelyn send you? She said you would forget. I had a plan. What was the plan? Continue working until I became hungry enough to notice. Jenna placed 1 bag beside Lucy. Your father has terrible plans. Lucy opened the bag. I know. Ethan climbed down. Jenna handed him a sandwich. He looked toward the door. Where is Evelyn with the lawyer? She went alone. She said that was the point. Ethan smiled faintly. The lawyer Evelyn selected was a woman named Denise Carter, who had represented small businesses in Asheville for more than 20 years. Claire transferred money to a trust account controlled by Denise's office. Whitmore received no ownership rights, no purchase priority, and no authority over the repairs. Evelyn read the agreement twice. Ethan read it a 3rd time. Only then did she sign. The work began the following Monday. Local tradespeople came first. Walter's son repaired the roof. The 2 electricians from the cafe replaced the outdated circuits at cost. Mara from the pottery shop donated handmade tiles for the counter. The owner of the bookstore brought shelves for a reading corner. A retired carpenter repaired the front door and refused payment because Evelyn had fed him every morning during the year his wife was ill. Whitmore funded the materials, but no company logo appeared on the building. Claire arrived on the 2nd Saturday wearing jeans, work boots, and a gray sweater. She carried 2 boxes from a hardware supplier. Ethan was measuring a section of wall when she entered. He looked at the boxes. What is that? Primer, brushes, electrical covers, and 3 different kinds of screws. Why 3? The man at the store asked what kind I needed. What did you say that I did not know, so he sold you everything? Yes. Ethan took 1 box from her. You were robbed. Claire looked toward the half-repaired counter. Can I help? You can return 2 kinds of screws. I drove 2 hours. Then you have time. She folded her arms. I am serious. So am I. Lucy appeared from behind a stack of chairs. She can paint. Claire looked relieved. I can paint. Ethan looked at the navy wool coat folded over a chair. You said you could change a tire, too. I changed part of a tire. You failed to move one bolt. Your daughter told you not to make mean faces. Lucy handed Claire a paint roller. She can do the back wall. Claire accepted it. What color? Evelyn called from the kitchen. Blue. Claire looked at Ethan. That seems predictable. Do not say that where she can hear you. I heard him, Evelyn said. For 3 hours, Claire painted the back wall. She worked carefully at first, moving the roller in perfect vertical lines. Then paint splashed onto her wrist, the floor, and one side of her sweater. Lucy laughed. Claire looked at the blue mark on her sleeve. I like this sweater. Ethan passed behind her carrying a board. You are giving it character. She recognized the phrase. So this is what ruined looks like according to you. Claire smiled. It was easier now. Not simple, not safe, but easier. She returned every weekend. Sometimes she carried supplies. Sometimes she came with legal documents for Evelyn. Sometimes she sat in the corner while residents told her what Whitmore had done during earlier acquisitions. A bakery owner described losing his lease after an inspection reduced the value of his business. A couple from the bookstore showed her letters warning that fire insurance might be canceled. A woman who rented an apartment behind the pottery shop explained that she had begun packing before anyone formally asked her to leave. Claire took notes. She did not interrupt. She did not explain. She did not promise to fix everything before understanding what had been broken. At first, people watched her with suspicion. Then they stopped watching. That was the beginning of trust. One evening, after the others left, Ethan remained beneath the counter installing new supports. Lucy had fallen asleep in a booth with her cheek against an open picture book. Claire sat on the floor nearby, sorting screws into paper cups. The lights above the counter were not connected yet. A work lamp cast long shadows across the cafe. Claire held up 2 screws. These look the same. They are not. They are both silver. One is longer, barely. That is often how longer works. She placed the shorter screw into the correct cup. I had another board meeting today. Ethan tightened a bracket. How bad they did not fire me. That sounds positive. They also did not promise not to fire me. That sounds less positive. Claire leaned against the cabinet. They approved the outside review. Every acquisition Grant managed in the last 4 years will be examined. Ethan stopped working. That is a lot of properties. 43. How many people I do not know yet. He looked at her. Claire lowered her eyes. I should know. Oh, you will. That does not change the fact that I did not. Ethan returned to the bracket. No. She watched him work. You never make it easier. I am repairing a counter. Easier is not part of the contract. I meant for me. I know. Claire smiled faintly, but the smile faded. My father would hate what the company became. Maybe. You do not have to disagree with everything I say. I am not disagreeing. She looked at him. Ethan set down the wrench. People like to imagine the dead become perfect judges. They do not. They were people. They loved us, and they got things wrong. Claire studied his face. Is that how you think about Rachel? He looked toward Lucy. She slept beneath his jacket, one hand resting beside a purple crayon. Rachel loved quickly, he said. She got angry quickly, too. She bought groceries without a list and came home with 6 kinds of cereal, but no milk. Claire smiled. She sounds difficult. She was. The smile left his face, though tenderness remained. She was also brave. She knew she was sick before she told me. She waited because Lucy had a school play. Claire remained silent. Ethan picked up a screw, rolled it between his fingers, then put it down. Some nights I still wake up thinking I heard her in the kitchen. Claire's voice was soft. Do you know? He looked at the dark windows. But for a second I believe it. Claire rested her hands in her lap. Do you still feel married? The question stayed between them. She immediately looked away. I am sorry. That was too personal. No. Ethan leaned back against the cabinet. I still feel grateful. I still feel angry. Some days I still reach for my phone to call her. Claire looked at Lucy. I do not want to stand where someone else stood. You cannot. Claire turned toward him. That is not what I meant. I know. Ethan's voice softened. Rachel is part of Lucy. She is part of me. That does not make every room full. Claire's eyes met his. Does it make room for anyone else? Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Missing someone and living again are not opposites. Neither of them moved closer. From the booth, Lucy's shifted beneath Ethan's jacket. The work lamp hummed. Rain began softly against the window. Claire returned to sorting screws. Ethan returned to the counter. But the room no longer felt the same. The Bluebird reopened 6 weeks after Grant walked through its rear door with wire cutters in his pocket. The original sign remained above the entrance. Ethan had repaired the wood without covering the old paint. The gold bird still had one faded wing, but the board beneath it was strong. Inside the service counter stood level. The electrical panel carried new labels. The roof no longer leaked. The espresso machine gleamed beneath the lights with a new pressure valve and protected wiring. Evelyn refused to replace the cracked mug. Instead, Mara repaired it using a thin line of gold-colored resin. Evelyn placed it on a shelf behind the register. Lucy stood on a chair to see it. Why is the cracked gold? Evelyn adjusted the mug. Because broken does not always mean finished. Lucy opened her sketchbook. Jenna appeared from the kitchen wearing a clean blue apron with a small name tag. Morning manager. Ethan noticed it. You accepted. Jenna looked at Evelyn. She refused to take no. Evelyn handed her a set of keys. You start nursing classes again next month. We will change the schedule around them. Jenna closed her fingers around the keys. I do not know what to say. Say the coffee is ready. There are people outside. Evelyn turned the sign on the door. The bell rang. Customers entered until the cafe filled with voices, wet coats, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread. Walter took his old seat by the window. The electricians ordered biscuits. The young mother returned with her baby, now awake and reaching for everything on the table. Claire arrived without Marcus or Rachel. She wore a dark green coat and carried no portfolio. People still noticed when she entered. They simply did not stop talking anymore. Ethan stood near the espresso machine. Claire approached the counter. Is it safe? He handed her a cup. I would drink from it. That is still not a recognized safety standard. It worked before. She accepted the coffee. On the wall behind her hung a framed notice describing Whitmore's new community review process. Every major acquisition would require an independent property assessment. Business owners would receive reports directly from outside inspectors. Employees and residents could report misconduct through an external legal office. Executive bonuses could no longer depend only on acquisition price. Redevelopment plans affecting local businesses would require public meetings before purchase offers were issued. The reforms were not presented as charity. They were written as restrictions on power. Claire had insisted on that. The board approved them by one vote. She remained chief executive officer. Richard Dalton resigned from the ethics committee 2 days later. Ethan read the notice once. Then he asked Claire why it did not include a guarantee that local businesses could remain after redevelopment. She returned to Charlotte and added a preservation review requirement before the policy was finalized. She did not thank him for challenging her. He did not congratulate her for listening. Their conversations continued that way. Several weeks after the reopening, Claire offered Ethan a position at Whitmore, Director of Community Safety and Ethical Development. The salary was more than Ethan had earned in any year of his life. The health benefits would cover Lucy. The company car would start every morning. Ethan read the offer at his kitchen table. Then he drove to Charlotte and placed it on Claire's desk. No. She looked at the envelope. You did not negotiate. I am declining. Because of me, partly. Claire leaned back. That is honest. You would be my boss. I could structure the position differently. You would still own the structure. She looked toward the city beyond her office window. What will you do instead? I filed papers for my own company. Claire looked back at him. What kind? Safety inspections for small businesses, repairs, documentation, contract review through outside partners. You have outside partners, I know people. You always know people. They are useful. Claire smiled. What is the company called? Walker Community Repair. That sounds temporary. So did the Bluebird. She picked up the rejected offer. Would your company accept Whitmore as a client with transparent contracts? Yes. No exclusive agreement. Agreed. No reduced rate because you bought me coffee. I have not bought you coffee. Ethan looked at the cup on her desk. That came from your building. Claire lifted it. Then I still owe you. He held her gaze. Yes. On a Friday evening in late October, the reopening crowd had finally thinned. Warm light spilled from the Bluebird windows onto the wet sidewalk. Claire stood beneath the awning, watching rainwater move along the curb. Ethan joined her carrying 2 paper cups. She looked at one. Business meeting, no folder, no attorneys, no maps. She accepted the cup. Ethan leaned against the brick wall. For a man who had faced Grant without trembling, he suddenly seemed uncertain. Claire waited. He looked through the window. Lucy sat with Evelyn near the register, pretending not to watch them. Ethan turned back to Claire. "Dinner Friday." Claire looked down at the cup, then at him. "Today is Friday. Next Friday. Are you going to repair anything during dinner? I cannot guarantee that. What kind of restaurant? One where the chairs are already level? That sounds expensive. I know people." Claire smiled. "Yes." The cafe door opened behind them. Lucy stepped outside. Finally, Ethan looked at her. "You were helping Evelyn, I was. She sent me. For what? To make sure neither of you got scared." Claire laughed. Ethan shook his head. "You are going inside." Lucy turned towards the door, then looked back. Next Friday inside. She disappeared into the cafe. Claire took a sip of coffee. She is going to plan the whole evening. She has strong opinions. So does Evelyn. They spend too much time together. Inside, Lucy returned to her booth and opened her sketchbook. On a clean page, she drew the Bluebird Café beneath a clear night sky. Ethan stood beneath the sign. Claire stood beside him. Lucy drew herself between them, holding both their hands. Above the cafe, she added a small silver star. It was the same star she used in every picture of her mother. Ethan came inside and stopped beside the booth. Lucy looked up. "Is it okay?" He studied the drawing. Claire had not replaced Rachel. She stood in a different space. The star remained above them, bright and untouched. Ethan rested one hand on Lucy's shoulder. "Yeah, Luce." She waited. He looked toward Claire through the window. "There's room." Lucy returned to the drawing. Outside, Claire stood beneath the repaired Bluebird sign, holding 2 cups while the rain softened over Asheville. Inside, the espresso machine hissed. The bell above the door rang. Someone laughed near the window. Evelyn called for another plate of biscuits. The Bluebird was no longer silent.